this is Michael and Elisa French here in Karatina, Kenya at Pavilion Village Children's Home. Pavilion Village is a children's home that Elisa and I started back in 2005, and we just wanted to take a little bit of time today and tell you the story of how this home came to be. Way back in the 1990s, I was traveling back and forth to Kenya. I was a pastor in the United States, traveling back and forth to Kenya with a good friend of mine, Bishop Dr. Stephen Kabachia, and we were doing medical clinics and crusades all over the country. I would bring doctors with us, I would preach at the crusades, the doctors would do the medical clinics, and then we would have gatherings with the people in the communities each day. And after a number of years of doing that, having actually brought a couple of my children over the years, I realized my wife had not had the chance to come with me, and we brought her to Kenya, to a little town just up the road here called Nanyuki. And I wanted her to share a little bit about what happened that began in Nanyuki and over the few days that followed after we returned to the U.S., because that's really the birthplace of Pavilion.
Yeah, so we were in Nanyuki doing crusades, as he was talking about, and I saw so many homeless boys that were on the streets and addicted to glue, sniffing glue, and having no home to go to. And I felt really convicted because I had 4 small boys at home, and I knew they were tucked safely in bed, and here I was ministering in a country but not really helping a problem that was really sad and just out of control with homelessness for the children. So I began to pray, and I felt Holy Spirit leading me to start an orphanage. And so I spoke to the bishop and I said, I'm kind of feeling this. And he said, well, let's pray about that. We'll think about that. And we went home. And we went home, and I began to tell a few people about what I felt like the Holy Spirit had spoken to me about possibly starting an orphanage. And I can remember one day crying. I began to feel overwhelmed, thinking, there is no way I can do this. I have no money. I have no training to do anything like this. All I had was passion in my heart to help these young boys and children. And so I said, Lord, I'll make a deal with you. I said, if Bishop fully blesses us doing this, then I'll do it. But there's no way I can do it. And I heard him speak to me in my spirit, and he said, I will provide. If you'll do it, I will provide. And so I kind of made a deal with God, thinking the deal wouldn't come to pass for several years. And then that day, Michael came home. You want me to share that part?
Yeah, go ahead.
So he comes home and he goes, guess who was in my office today? And I said, I have no idea. He said, Bishop Kabachia. I said, well, I thought he was in Africa. He said, no, he's here right now. And he said, he told me that he wanted to bless what you had in your heart, and he wanted you to run with it and do the orphanage. And I'll be honest with you, I was kind of disappointed at first. I was thinking, Lord, I thought you were going to give me a little bit more time to prepare, maybe get my thoughts around it, make some plans. But they said, no, start right away. So we started, and we began to tell people, and we had our first great big donation, which was $1,000 from Mr. Harry Coates, and he's gone on to be with the Lord. But we're grateful that he had the faith to say, okay, I can see your vision, and I'm going to put some money behind what you want to do. Yeah,
he put that first seed in the ground for Pavilion. So after that first seed was planted for Pavilion Village, we had the opportunity to travel back to Kenya for actually a month-long trip in East Africa, Kenya and Tanzania. And I was pastoring a church in Birmingham, Alabama at the time, so my associate pastor, Jim Henderson, came with me, and we spent about 2 weeks traveling all over Kenya looking for property. We looked at 8 or 10 pieces of property, and in Nairobi we stopped by an orphanage that we just wanted to see how it was run, and we had a great time there. But as we were leaving, we were sharing that we just hadn't found anything we thought would work. And the head of that orphanage looked at us and he said, you need to return to the place where the vision was birthed, and you'll find what you need somewhere near there. And so amazingly enough, he didn't know it, but our very last stop with 2 pieces of property to see was back near Nyeri, the area where the vision had been birthed. So we drove up to the Mount Kenya region. Bishop Kabachia traveled with us. We met a land agent here, and he took us to a little place just north of here to look at a piece of property that was just a few acres and nothing much to it. It really didn't seem suitable. And our very last stop was to meet an agent in Karatina at the Elephant Castle Hotel. And we stopped there at the Elephant Castle Hotel. Jim and I sitting in the back of a 10-passenger, 12-passenger van. We're in the very back, and a woman comes out who apparently owned the piece of property we were going to see. Her father had passed away, and she had inherited it but didn't have the money to maintain it. And she began to try and back out of allowing us to see the property. And Jim and I are in the back just thinking, what are we going to do? Nothing we've seen so far is suitable. We were hoping at least maybe this last spot might be it. And she begins to say the reason she wanted to back out is that she had always had a vision that if the property was not in her family's hands, that it would be used as a home for the elderly, or it would be used as a children's home. And so at that point, Jim and I couldn't take it anymore. We about lost it, saying, wait, you've got to let us see the property. I think we scared her because she didn't even know we were there. And she finally agreed, once she heard what our vision was, to let us come see the property. We drove through the rough streets and the unpaved roads and the rock and gravel drives up the side of this hill that we're on here in Karura, Kenya. And we came up seeing the tea fields at the top and banana trees and just a lush, fertile area, pulling up to a place where we saw these gates to a battered old wall and this beaten up, sort of run down house was beyond them. And the gates opened up and we saw one of the most beautiful sights I think you could ever see. A roof falling in, walls crumbling, a terrible mess inside the building. Amazingly enough, a two-car garage. The guy who had owned the property had been very wealthy. We found a picture inside where he had met the prince, I think Prince Philip from England during the colonial times. It was just amazing. It couldn't have asked for a more beautiful piece of property or a better piece of property. 5 acres of fertile farmland and a building already built that just needed a little TLC to work. So we went back into town, we talked to the lady, and we asked, what do you want for this? And keep in mind, Lisa had raised at that point, I think about $2,000, and she asked, would we come and see if we could find a plot of land for about $2,000 that we could buy and maybe one day in the future build the orphanage. And so what happens is we go back, we're talking to the lady, Jim and I both are just certain this is the place. We ask her how much she wants for it. She said $20,000. And we said, well, we don't have $20,000. Would you take $2,000 and let us pay you in 6 months? And she said, yes. So I called home and I told Lisa, we found property, and I went ahead and bought it. And she says, you could buy property for $2,000? I said, no, I put $2,000 down on a $20,000 piece of property, and we have 6 months to raise the rest.
So Michael came. I was really kind of frustrated with Michael because it just took everything I had, what little faith I had at the time to raise the $2,000. And then for him to tell me now my job is to finish raising the other portion of it, which was about $18,000. Not to mention the house needed a lot of improvement, so it was going to take far more than just $18,000. But so anyway, they came home and we had a few months to raise it, and we didn't see how we were going to do it, so we just struggled with it. So we said, you know what? We know God's told us to do this. We're going to take a small loan out on our house. Went to the bank and they said, well, we'll let you do that, but you're still going to need some guarantors. Mm-hmm. So I had to call people. It was hard for me. I'm just not good at asking people for financial help. And so I called a few friends and I said, would you be willing to sign on a note? And I finally gathered 5 people that were willing to say, yes, we'll guarantee $5,000 each. And so they came. The day came when we had to go and sign the paperwork at the bank, which was literally the weekend that we were leaving for Kenya. So it was on a Friday afternoon. Everyone had gone to the bank and signed the papers, and except for one person. And I'm calling that person. I'm like, look, we got to get our money this afternoon. Can you please get to the bank quickly? And Chuck said, yeah, I'm on my way. It's 4 o'clock. I'll get there as soon as I can. And Michael was going to the bank to meet him there, and a lady walks into the office. Someone I was familiar with, but didn't have a really close relationship to. But she walks in. She said, "I know this may sound crazy, but I just feel like God's told me that I'm supposed to write y'all a check for $30,000 to help with the orphanage. Would that be something that you would need?" And I started crying. I called Michael. He came back to the church. We had to call our friend Chuck and say, "You don't have to go and sign the papers now." And so it was amazing. You can't get any more miraculous than that, just for God to provide. He said, "If you'll do it, I'll make a way," and He surely has done that.
He has, and we were able to bring that money with us to Kenya, pay the woman for the property, and we had $10,000, actually, right about $10,000 that we were then able to put into renovating this beautiful piece of property that's now Pavilion Village Children's Home. And we welcomed our first kids about a year after that in 2006. But we had to do all the renovations. We brought a team over, we painted, you should have seen the folks here from the U.S. painting this place and working on the bathrooms and putting the new roof on and trying to get solar power in so there could be a little bit of temporary electricity, and it was just an amazing thing. But there was one piece of that puzzle that was still left out, and that was, now we have property, now we have a building that's functional. We closed in that garage and we knew we could make it a dorm area. We had room for kids to stay. We wanted there to be one child, one bed, which is unique for Kenya. We wanted to really have a home environment, a place where the kids could grow up in a family, not in an institution, but in a real family. And to do that, we had to have parents. We had to have house parents, a mom and a dad. And we began to wonder, what do you do for this? And began to pray, God, would you show us who those folks are? So we're about to ask them to come and join us. But I want Lisa to tell you, as they're getting ready to walk up here, how she chose, or how we chose, our house parents, John and Agnes Maragi. So
as John and Agnes are coming, I'm just going to welcome them and come in and join us. This is our house mom and dad, John and Agnes, and we're so grateful for them. And I would love to tell you that it was a long, arduous process to find these godly people, but it was really just a Holy Spirit encounter. When we had gone in 2004, my first trip to Nanyuki, and done an outreach there, I had met you, Pastor John, there. And I loved him because I just thought he just had a kind heart, and he always had just seemed to have a glow when I would see him. His face was always shining, and I loved that about him. And then when we came back like a year later, when we had been, after we purchased the property and worked on the house some, we happened to be driving down the road, and we saw him on the side of the road. He was walking. You were dressed in a very nice suit. I remember. Okay. You looked really nice. And I looked at Michael. I said, Michael, I whispered to him, I said, I think he would make a really good house dad. Do you think he would be willing to do that? And Michael said, well, we'll ask, and see. And so we gave you a ride. You were walking, I think, from Karura to Karatina.
Yeah.
And so how long is that? How long of a walk is that?
It's like 4 kilometers.
4 kilometers. And we said, you want to ride? So he got in the van with us. And the rest is history. He accepted and said yes. Was that scary for you?
It was not, because in my heart I felt that God has fulfilled something has been in my heart since I was a child, like those children. And because I could go to a place where mostly there is a funeral, a parent has died and left the children, and I could feel pity of them and passion. That those children are left without anybody to take care of them. I could feel, I wish I have strength, I can keep them and take care of them. So that's how it happened.
So you had to go home and tell Agnes.
I had to go home and tell Agnes it's something that God wants us to do. Our next thing that God wants us to do. And I told her exactly what you say to me, and she said, if it's God's will, let's do it.
Amen. We want you to meet some of the kids too. Unfortunately today when we're filming, most of the kids are away at school, and actually it's been 13 years now since we began Pavilion Village Children's Home with the first children that were Agnes, they were between about 5 years old and about 10 years
10
old,
years
something,
old,
wasn't
yeah.
it?
Yeah.
So something in that age range. So we actually have some of our first kids who have graduated from high school. They're here today working on a project building cattle enclosure for us, but they're really busy doing that. A bunch of our kids are away at school. Some of them are at university and off studying now, and the older ones are away in boarding school for high school, but we have at least a handful of our little ones who we're going to ask to come on up here and join us just so you can see them and see at least a few. There's been about 40 children who have passed through the doors of Pavilion Village at this point, with about 20 some odd kids who are here presently. Is that right, while we're filming? So come on up, guys. Come up here and join us. Come and just stand around here with us and let everybody see you as we close out this story of how Pavilion Village came to be. So.
And these are some of our younger ones, as Michael was saying.
Come on in, buddy.
You know, it's not always been easy, has it, John and Agnes?
Yeah.
We've not always had money. There have been times where the children, we needed school fees for them, and, you know, they've been sit home. And we don't want that for them. So, you know, if this touches your heart in any way, we appreciate your support. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I just want to tell you, we hope to have some additional footage for you you can find in some other places. You have to hear the stories of some of these guys who are at college, at university. See some of their faces and think of them at this age and what they've become. And I really believe you could believe with us as well in prayer and in your support and giving that we truly can, as our motto is, change Africa one child at a time.